Well, as Pastor Keith talked about, this is our series we are in, we are 1 in a million. And so let me just kind of recap a little bit from last week, that you are not a number. You are loved. You are valued. You're not disposable. And your value is not determined by your possessions or what you do or what others say about you. That we know that in creation, the story of creation, that God made man and woman with his bare hands. And David talked about in Psalm 139 that the children, you and I, are knitted in our mother's womb. And so we want to make sure as we talk about these things and we go forward in today, that we want to talk about some little tweaks to this as we talk about this being 1 in a million. Now, we know that everybody in this room, everybody that's watching with us online, and everybody around us, you've been given certain passions and skills and abilities. They're kind of the things that we default to, that they're given to us. They're gifts. They're what we automatically do. We don't even have to think about it. It's just who we are. So it just kind of comes about. I know sometimes when we talk in the church, we talk about using your spiritual gifts, the gifts that God has given you. And I believe that spiritual gifts are just that. They are gifts. We don't even have to really kind of think about it as we have to develop them, because they're natural. They flow right out of us. And today we don't want to necessarily talk about what you've been built to do or what you've been wired to do, as much as we want to talk about the opportunities that you and I have before us. These moments in time when we can do something. These moments in time and opportunity where we can step out and do. Now, an opportunity is not necessarily business. It's not necessarily financial. Opportunities are the disruptions of our day. They're the things that cross our paths we didn't expect. I believe there are impromptu moments that come about in your mind, that maybe you think about a friend or a coworker or a neighbor that maybe you've not talked to in a while. I think there are these moments in time when things happen that they're laid into our path, and then we get to choose how we handle the opportunity. We get to choose, are we going to respond or not? See, I believe these moments are powerful. And I also believe that these are the moments that Jesus lays right in front of us. So today, as we talk through this being 1 in a million, that you're loved and you are valued, it's about taking an opportunity with these opportunities when these moments arise. Part of that is we have to see people the way God sees us, that they're 1 in a million, that they're loved, that they're valued. But it's also about taking these interactions, these introductions, be prepared to look for them, to see them, and to respond. You know, this passage it's not going to be on the screen, but it's 1 Timothy. It's actually out of the Message, and I love the way it comes across in 3:15. It says, be ready to speak up and tell anyone who asks why you're living the way you are, and always with the utmost courtesy. So as we talk about these opportunities, that there's a cry for us to be ready, to be ready. And this morning, we're going to look at the story of Esther. And Esther is an incredible story. It's full of bravery and courage and faith. But Esther's story was one of an opportunity. And when you begin reading in chapter 1 of Esther, it's the story about, and it kind of lays out the King Xerxes, because he's looking for a queen. He's looking for a new queen. And like many rulers, he struggles with authority and power and control. He has vanquished his old queen, Vashti. She was disobedient and didn't follow protocol, and he dethroned her and sent her away. His battle plans for taking over the world have not gone as planned. And he begins this process of looking for his new queen, the next queen of Persia. And so as we kind of set that foundation, we move into chapter 2, verse 7. And this is what it says, verse 7 of chapter 2. Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, who had been brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. And Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother had died. And so just a little history to kind of make sure we're on the same page is that Mordecai is the cousin and Esther is related. She's an orphan. She's lost both her parents and her Jewish name. Her Jewish name is this Hadassah. But if you'll remember, we've talked before in church, and maybe you've read on your own, that when the Jews were taken in captivity in Babylon, they were given new names. Her Persian name was Esther. It's kind of part of the process of recreating identity for them and help them to move away from their former life. And so here's Esther, orphan, been raised by a distant cousin, and now this word is out. And you got to imagine that if the king is looking for a new queen, there had to be like yard signs everywhere around the area, looking for a new queen. And, there's probably some categories of what they're looking for. There's some list of things that maybe would drum up a little more business. And so they're setting up this process. And you can go on and read in the rest of chapter 2 of what that would entail. In fact, let's read that now. Verse 12 says, before a young woman's turn came to go and to see King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with oil and myrrh, and 6 with perfume and cosmetics. And this is how she would go to the king. Anything she wanted was given to her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. So from the whole countryside, the whole kingdom of Persia, which at this time in our world history is the largest kingdom known. Most powerful man in the world is Xerxes, and he's looking for a queen. Signs are up, and women from all over are really applying to be the queen. I mean, this is really the very first episode of The Bachelor. There's roses involved. There's auditions. I mean, this is what we're at to. And the women are coming, and they are going through these treatments and ready to roll. The person in charge of the women shows Esther favor. And for a year, each of these women are pampered and taken care of, special perfumes, oil treatments, food, and preparations just to make the best first impression possible. Ultimately, Esther is chosen. Out of all the women that came, all the women in the world that came and applied, that qualified, Esther is the one that he chooses. I mean, she must have really stood out. There was something about her that he could not choose anyone else. He chooses her. And basically, she steals his heart. I mean, this is really a Cinderella story, isn't it? I mean, from an orphan to queen of Persia, from an abandoned child, they conquered people, living in exile. Next thing you know, she is exalted to the highest position by a woman in the world. Life is good. Life is good. As the queen of Persia, she would have all kinds of responsibility, all kinds of authority, and life is good. Now, not long after Esther is crowned, there is drama, and there's always drama. Always drama. There's drama in the kingdom. And we're not going to go into all of the drama that takes place, but just enough to help us with the rest of the story. That the king Xerxes had this right-hand man that was not honorable. He was evil, in fact. His name was Haman. And Haman was elevated to this place of honor. And he had Xerxes' ear, and he had Xerxes' confidence. And one of the things that Haman would say is he would ask the nobles, he'd ask the people of the empire that they would bow when they came into their presence. And he knew that the Jewish people, Mordecai, who was Jewish, he knew they wouldn't bow. They had their beliefs, their faith system did not allow them to bow to anybody but God. And so Haman comes up with this plan to get rid of Mordecai because it really ticked him off. And this is what happens in Esther chapter 3, verse 8. It says, then Haman said to King Xerxes, there's a certain people dispersed among the peoples in all the province of your kingdom who keep themselves separate. Their customs are different from those of all of the people. They do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I'll give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administrators for the royal treasury. So Haman decides, if I'm going to get rid of Mordecai, here's the way to do it. We're going to eradicate all of them, the whole people group. And he says, king, if you do this, I mean, they're a threat. I mean, if you go back and look at that passage again, it says there's a certain people and they're dispersed in your whole crowd. That's kind of scary because you can't tell them apart. I mean, King Xerxes didn't even know he was married to a Jew. And he's saying there's such a threat to our way of life. There's such a threat, you wouldn't even know it. So we gotta get rid of them. We can't have this. Their customs are different than us. We just gotta get rid of them. We cannot tolerate it. See, it's something about this that if we can find a way to dehumanize people, then we can justify hating them. If we can dehumanize them, then we can justify hating them. And the king agrees. Because think about it. He's not in the best place. He's not been able to defeat the Greeks like he wanted. His queen, he got to get rid of his queen. And things just not going the way that he wanted. And he agrees. Let's keep peace, get rid of all the Jews. And it's not because he hated them. He didn't even know who they were. He just knew that there was a certain group of people, but the people he trusted. Haman told him they were a threat. So he said, let's get rid of them. We just need to eradicate all of them. And Haman is so evil and so vile, he offers blood money. I'll even put money in the account for you. And what begins to happen is throughout the countryside, the Jews throughout the whole region begin to mourn. They begin to weep. And Mordecai, who knows that Esther's in the palace, knows that Esther has got the ear of the king. He sends a message to her. We need help. We got to plead on your behalf. You've got to come to the defense of our people. You can't allow this decree, this egg from the word from the king, because we're all going to die here. And he sends word to Esther, please do something. And Esther responds back to him, and we'll read that in a second, but basically what she says is, Esther's got some real challenges here. Some things that maybe you've not thought of yet, but here, the first one is, she's never told the king, she never told Xerxes she was a Jew. So if she comes out to defend the people and comes clean that this is my people, and if the king holds to the law, if he doesn't back down, then she's going to get assassinated. Esther would be terminated right there if she becomes an advocate for the people. Second thing is, the king has not called for her in 30 days to come to his presence. Now, that may be hard to believe because I got to tell you, every day when I go home, Ashley's there. I don't have to call for her. And if I by chance walked in and said, Ashley, listen, I need to take a break from you for 30 days. She would beat me with a stick. And if she didn't, her friends would. I mean, it would be terrible. But this is a different time, and the king has had an issue. The king has had an issue with the previous queen that he dethroned. He's a little on the cranky side. And if you go before the king without being requested to come before the king, it could be, and oftentimes was, a death sentence. There was just a protocol into which you handled the royalty. So either way, she's facing a death sentence. And she's got a great life. I mean, if you're Esther and your cousin who, you like and you are thankful for what he's raised you, but you get the note that we need you to go before us. You need to stand up. You need to speak on our behalf. You realize the decision you're about to make and the impact, and you got a good thing going. But when opportunities come about, they become choices that we have to make. Esther chapter 4, verse 12. And she had already told him these concerns. I could die, and if I go without being asked, I will die. And this is Mordecai's reply. Do not think that because you are the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? I mean, Mordecai is realizing the seriousness of the situation. And it would have been easy for Esther to hide in the shadow of the comfort. I wouldn't blame her. I don't think you would either. And he reminds her she's dead anyway. If you don't say anything at all, your people are going to die. And then he begins with this, but maybe, just maybe, you have been given this unbelievable opportunity for such a time as this to change the world. You could change everything. It's this moment in history that you can have an impact. Your position and platform are enough. You could step in and do something. You have an opportunity to make a real difference. And she responds in Esther 4, verse 15. And then Esther sent this reply back to Mordecai. Go, gather all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. And my attendants will fast as you do. And when this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Esther's letting her know, listen, okay, you're right. Maybe my position is for such a time as this, is I'm going to step in here and I'm going to do something. I'm going to go out on a limb. But before we do this, I need all of you to be praying. I need you to fast. We're going to take 3 days. And then even though it's against the law, I'm going to go in and talk to the king. And no matter the position, no matter the platform, no matter what, all the things are going to happen, we got to know as we pray, it's critical. It's critical. Because to face the king could mean death instantly. And she says, if I perish, I perish. Well, you fast forward and she's made these requests to Xerxes, and he received her in his presence. He didn't have her killed or executed. In fact, he said, my queen, I'm going to get whatever you want is yours, up to half of the kingdom. Just say it. It's yours. And Esther chapter 7, verse 3 says this, then Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king. And King Xerxes answered Queen Esther, who is this, and where is he, the man who has dared to do such a thing? And Esther said, an adversary and an enemy, the vile Haman. Now, the rest of the story kind of goes that Xerxes sends out a new order. He immediately abolishes the old order of kill the Jews. And in fact, it's now save the Jews and honor them. Mordecai, who had stepped in and helped Xerxes in other matters, is given Haman's estate. Esther is beloved. Haman is executed in the way that he was planning on executing Mordecai. And it moves on to the story and history of the church and faith and all those things. Now, maybe you've got to start asking this question is, what in the world? How do we apply that to us? What does this mean to us? I mean, as best I can tell, probably nobody in this room or nobody with us online, you have not been pampered for a year. You have not, I mean, we're happy if everybody bathes once a week, right? But to be pampered with special oils and treatments, that you got a special diet with chefs that prepared your food every day for a year to take care of you. I bet nobody in the room or online has had to struggle with being treated like royalty this year. More than likely, you have not had to make very difficult decisions on slavery or genocide. I mean, it's a great story. Motivational, maybe, perhaps. I mean, so for such a time as this, that's kind of got a little charge to it, and it kind of helps us, and maybe it's just encouraging. If I die, I die, or if I perish, I perish. And, you know, those things like that, they got a little something to them. But I believe we all come across these opportunities, little to big, that have the chance to shape the future of our lives, especially our faith journey and where we're going. that our stories begin to be shaped by these opportunities on what we do and respond. See, so many times you and I are running through life so quickly. We are blitzing through this life, struggling. It's hard. We get that. It's hard. Life is hard. We push through at such a rapid rate to just survive the day, to survive the week, to survive the month, survive the year, just get to retirement. Hopefully we've made it to retirement and we can have the next however many years to enjoy, that we run and push so hard that we miss the everyday, ordinary opportunities that come before us. These things that just step out. We become masters at ignoring the nudges of the Holy Spirit, because we can write it off as, I'm busy. I'm doing good things. I did that type of thing last week. I shouldn't have to do that type of thing this week. And we begin to ignore, not because we're bad people, because we're stressed, we're busy. We don't need it. There's a story that Keith and I were talking this week, and he shared the story with me, and I looked it up, and I wanted to share it with you because I was just completely blown away by it. Stories about Katie Harris, who in 2007 was a high school senior. She was the homecoming queen in Brentwood High School. And at the end of graduation that spring, she decides to do a mission trip with her church, and she heads over into Uganda. And the plan was, and her family knew, and all those things, that she would go to Uganda, she'd have this mission trip, and she would come home, and she was going to go to a college, she was going to become a nurse, and she would be off into the same rat race everybody else is in. While in Uganda, God began to change her life, changed the way she processed things. And she was a devout Christian, a devout believer. But while in Uganda, she said, I can't leave here. This is now my home. And people were pleading with her and trying to challenge her. She actually did leave for a few weeks, and she went and entered school and decided she was still going to pursue nursing. But after a few weeks, she went back to Uganda. 18 years old, she was offered a teaching position at an orphanage to teach kindergarten, a little village called Jinje. She accepted. Can you imagine if you're the parents? Can you imagine? I mean, I've tried to think, if that was my kids who said, hey, I'm going on a mission trip, and by the way, I'm staying. I'll see you when we can see you. I mean, if I don't choke them till they black out, I don't know. But I mean, it would have just ripped my heart out. But Katie decided this is what she's going to do. And I wonder, I wonder as these opportunities begin to pile up, she's teaching kindergarten in this orphanage. I wonder if phrases like, for such a time as this, if I perish, I perish. I wonder if those phrases were running around in her mind, because she's in Uganda teaching. 4 years later, she's still there. She's still teaching in this kindergarten, in this orphanage in Uganda. She's also sharing her home with 13 orphaned or abandoned girls, the age 2 to 15. Katie is the legal guardian and foster mother to all of them. She hopes, what she said back in 2011 is, I hope to adopt them. In the article she was quoted, she said, I think that's definitely something that I was made for. She goes on at the age of 20 to develop a nonprofit called Amazina Ministries, which means truth in Ugandan. She begins to raise support for what she's doing, and U.S. donors begin to come around her, and they sponsor right now. They provide school education for 400 children. They provide community health programs, doctors and nurses. They feed more than 1,000 children 5 days a week, 3 meals a day. She is the director and the minister, and she teaches kindergarten still in the orphanage. Her job, what she raises, supports her family and the children that live with her. She's married now and still running, still using her house as an orphan, basically to take in abandoned children. This is what she had to say. People definitely ask me, why so many? That's a lot, right? She goes, I don't know. I don't know. But these are the children that God brought to my door. These are the children that God brought to my door. Now, I'm not asking you to go to Uganda, but what are the opportunities? What are the opportunities, the out of the ordinary that become extraordinary moments and times that something's laid in your path that require a response from us that are laying at our door? I mean, what would happen if we became a community of believers that were opportunistic? We took advantage of the opportunities that come before us, that we open the door, we jump, we figure it out on the fly. I'm going to ask you, for those of you that have been doing the 516 prayer, you pray with us in the morning or night or both, and I'm going to ask you that this week, that you specifically pray for those opportunities, that we be that people. We be those people that jump at these things, that we could change our community, we could change our world, we could change your story.